Welcome back to The Explainer. All right, today we're unpacking a seriously fascinating piece of media analysis. We're looking at a highly energized breakdown that deconstructs the entire narrative surrounding Spencer Pratt's campaign for mayor of Los Angeles. This source material offers a really unique window into how local, highly polarized elections are being framed by non-traditional media. They're using a wild blend of pop culture, personal tragedy, and viral stunts, and honestly, it's a masterclass in modern political narrative building. Okay, let's dive right in.
Right off the bat, the source hooks us with this totally surprising admission from late-night host Bill Maher. The original commentator, Benny Johnson, heavily emphasizes this specific quote. Maher is speaking to his liberal audience, noting that despite Pratt running on a platform often associated with conservatives in this race, he just can't bring himself to hate the guy. And really, this is our jumping-off point today. Why is a controversial reality TV star turned political candidate suddenly winning over voices in the mainstream Hollywood media?
Section 1. The Unlikely Media Endorsement. Let's look at this unlikely alliance.
So, the source maps out the cast of characters for this election by setting up a classic, almost cinematic underdog story. On one side, you've got incumbent politicians like Karen Bass and Nikki Rahman. The original analysis points out that they reside in multi-million-dollar mansions, yet their poll numbers are allegedly collapsing. On the flip side, you have Spencer Pratt. The commentary crafts this really powerful origin story for Pratt, noting that his motivation to run actually began when his own home burned down. The source uses this stark contrast to paint Pratt as the relatable outsider taking on a totally insulated establishment.
And, this perfectly illustrates exactly why voices like Bill Maher are paying attention. The source highlights Maher's specific praise for Pratt, noting that he is refreshingly devoid of standard political handlers. When challenged, Pratt essentially says, "Look, I have no advisors, I only care about the issues." The analysis argues that this makes Pratt seem honest and, ironically, very un-Californian for a guy from California. It's this narrative of raw authenticity cutting right through standard political polish.
Moving on to Section 2, LA's core crisis, highlighting the issues. Now, I want you to look at this number, 75,000. To put that into perspective, the original source claims this staggering figure represents the number of homeless encampment fires in LA. The commentary paints a really grim picture of the Hollywood Walk of Fame, describing it as an area just plagued by refuse and, according to the host, city-provided drug paraphernalia. Whether you agree with the politics of it or not, the source uses this intense imagery and this massive number to totally validate the anger driving Pratt's campaign.
So, the crucial question is, how does Pratt's campaign respond to this crisis visually? Well, the source material details some highly unconventional and completely viral tactics. First, you've got Pratt physically power-washing the streets in his campaign ads, a very literal representation of cleaning up the city. But the commentary spends a ton of time enthusiastically describing this one stunt where a group set up a fake homeless encampment, complete with actors and barbecues, right outside politician Nikki Rahman's mansion. The host calls this hilarious and actually credits these aggressive visual tactics for causing his opponent's poll numbers to totally tank.
Which brings us right back to the emotional core of Pratt's message, as highlighted by the source. Because his own home was destroyed in a fire, his claim that he knows the consequences of failed leadership carries some serious weight. The analysis frames this personal loss as the central engine for his campaign against what he labels corrupt politicians. Honestly, it's a textbook example of turning personal tragedy into political momentum. All right, Section 3, Divided Hollywood. Let's look at the media reactions.
The source actually sets up a direct media feud to illustrate what's going on here. On the left side, you've got Jimmy Kimmel, who the original commentary points out is heavily attacking Pratt. The host ironically observes that Kimmel's own studio sits right on Hollywood Boulevard, literally ground zero for the very crisis Pratt is highlighting. On the right side, you have Bill Maher, who is giving Pratt a super warm reception and a massive platform. The source uses this exact contrast to suggest that the traditional LA media, represented by Kimmel, is basically in denial, while more independent thinkers, like Maher, are willing to actually engage. To really hammer home Pratt's cultural relevance, the original analysis pulls up this joke Bill Maher made on his show. Maher quipped that when Iran finally got their internet back after an 88-day blackout, the very first thing everyone said was, "Spencer Pratt is going to be mayor of Los Angeles." The original host views this joke as undeniable proof of Pratt's massive cultural penetration and interprets it as a tacit, if, comedic endorsement.
Section 4, Political Framing, Analyzing the Campaign.
Now notice a really specific correction the source makes right here.
Bill Maher had referred to Pratt as running as a Republican, but the original host explicitly steps in to correct that, clarifying that Pratt is actually running in a nonpartisan race. The host argues that Democrats are trying to unfairly label Pratt's desire for clean, safe streets as a MAGA extremist agenda, when in reality his platform is strictly focused on local infrastructure and homelessness.
And when it comes to homelessness, wow, the rhetoric is explosive. The source features an interview clip where Pratt makes an absolutely massive claim that figures like Governor Gavin Newsom and Mayor Karen Bass are complicit in laundering $24 billion. Pratt alleges this money isn't actually reducing homelessness, but rather increasing it. Now, as an explainer, we obviously aren't here to validate this number, but we are highlighting that the source amplifies this incredible accusation as a core reason for Pratt's rapidly rising popularity. The original host enthusiastically, and I mean enthusiastically, agrees with this framing. They specifically praise Pratt for calling out what they term a homeless industrial complex. The source echoes Pratt's belief that there is a massive misuse of federal housing and urban development, or HUD dollars, basically describing it as a money laundering operation designed to fund big projects rather than actually solve the street-level crisis. It is a fiery, anti-establishment message that the original analysis fully champions.
So where does all this leave the actual election? Well, according to the data cited by the source, there is a 66% chance that Spencer Pratt actually survives this coming Tuesday's jungle primary where, all candidates run on the exact same ballot regardless of their party. If he does survive, he's going to face off directly against incumbent Karen Bass in the November general election. The commentary uses this statistic to prove that Pratt is not just some protest candidate, he is a legitimate statistical threat to the political establishment.
Which brings us to our final thought. We've seen how personal tragedy, completely viral stunts, and the dividing lines of late-night talk shows have fueled a local mayoral run. It forces us to step back and ask, how much do celebrity endorsements and non-traditional media platforms actually shape modern local elections? Are we watching the new blueprint for political campaigning in the digital age, where a single podcast interview can literally outweigh millions in traditional ad spend? It's a fascinating question to consider as you watch these local races unfold. Thank you for joining me for this explainer, and as always, keep questioning the narrative.